Joining me now is none other than Dr. Sebastian Gorka, one of the new rebels. How are you, Seb?
Greetings. I like that. New rebels.
I
like that.
You know, every year at CPAC when I do this, I feel like a sportscaster. I feel like
Don't ask me about American football, okay? Don't go there.
It's the only football. It was a good event this year. Vice President Pence spoke today. President Trump will be here tomorrow, and obviously the big issue in the room is gun control. Post the Parkland shooting, we're seeing a lot of hysterics down in Florida, but our state legislature, I was very encouraged. They held the line on the Second Amendment.
Yes.
What do you think, if anything, legislatively we're going to see at the federal level?
I think the president's tweet today nailed it. This is a mental health issue. So number one, who uses guns in a bad way? Number one, we have criminals, bank robbers, muggers. No legislation is going to stop somebody who's going to use a gun illegally, intentionally. Then we have terrorists like jihadis, like the San Bernardino shooters. No legislation, I'm sorry, it's just a fact, is going to stop a jihadi. And then who's left? Well, it's the events we've seen, whether it's Aurora, Colorado, whether it's the Klebold at the high school, or whether it's the recent killings in Florida. You can't legislate against mental illness.
Right. You can't legislate morality and crime. You can't legislate bad behavior. Look, I said this. This guy in Florida, Nicholas Cruz, he broke state laws when he entered the school with a gun. He broke state laws when he discharged the gun. He broke 17 counts of the murder statute in Florida. No law was stopping this guy.
But let's go back to the real issue nobody wants to talk about. In the 1970s, the left had a full frontal assault on the mental health system in America. There was even a Supreme Court ruling that led to what you see in downtown San Francisco and Manhattan today. You cannot, literally, it is almost impossible to adjudicate somebody as mentally incompetent.
Nearly impossible, that's
Nearly impossible. And even if you get to a point where you can, holding them in an institution for their own safety as well as the safety of others for more than 72 hours is literally impossible.
I'll tell you, as a former patrol cop, it is impossible.
Right.
And oftentimes, the psychiatrist would let them go in 12 hours. And unless they committed a crime, Seb, it didn't matter. We could have been called to that home 50 times.
Right.
If we got a liberal psychologist and they said they're okay, or psychiatrist, they're out on the street in 12 hours.
How does that make sense?
Not to me.
How does that make sense?
Not to any cop.
So when the president says we have to integrate the issue of mental health background checks into the system, who can be against that?
No, I don't think anyone is against it. I certainly am not. I think the primary point of concern for conservatives is they want built-in due process for somebody placed on one of these lists.
Right. We don't want, as happened previously, the suggestion that if you're a veteran who needs help in filling out their tax forms, that suddenly you can't manage your finances, therefore you're mentally incompetent, and therefore you will be held from practicing your Second Amendment rights.
That's right.
Absolutely. It has to be true danger to themselves and others with due process. Totally agree.
Yeah, and you bring up a really interesting point. Personal aside story. I've got a friend who served honorably. Combat journalist in the Navy. Then he was deployed with the Marines, some of the worst fighting in Afghanistan. Voluntarily submitted himself for PTSD. And voluntarily gave his firearms to a couple of other friends.
Wow.
A far-left, overzealous U.S. attorney tried to prosecute him because they said he had constructive possession of his guns, even though said he was undergoing PTSD treatment in Montana, and the guns were with his cousin in Colorado.
Unbelievable.
The ATF agent stepped in on behalf of my friend. They helped him out. But till this day, he has had to spend tens of thousands of dollars.
I'm sure.
Even though he was adjudicated mentally fit by the VA, by private psychologists, he still doesn't have his firearms because as we sit here, there's no legislative or judicial path to rights restoration for veterans.
Right. No, this is a massive issue. The due process issue is huge. And you mentioned, you connected this to civil rights. And some people react weirdly to this, but this is a civil rights issue.
Certainly is.
People look at, well, look at the models. Let's use the Australian model. Let's use the British model, Anglo-Saxon models of gun ownership. And I say, hang on, there's only one country in the world that has a Second Amendment there as a civil right. For what purpose? Not hunting, not to stop the mugger. One purpose and one purpose alone. You, the American citizen, are the last line of defense against a tyrannical regime.
That's right.
There is no model we're going to copy, because guess what? We were born in revolution against tyranny, and there's a reason that it's number 2 after freedom of speech.
And that's right. And people forget the fundamental being of the U.S. Constitution. It exists to say to government, you can't do this.
Right.
You can't. Not to us. Right. You can do this.
Right.
It's, hey, government.
Right.
Stop it.
It's like the issue of gridlock. People, I live in the swamp. People moan about gridlock. Right. You can't get anything. Guess what? The founding fathers wanted gridlock.
Yes, they did.
It's called checks and balances.
That's right.
They don't want a new King George riding roughshod over the Supreme Court, over the legislature. We were built upon the only nation in history built upon the concept of individual liberty and freedom.
We had that.
Let's remember it.
We had that for the last 8 years, called King Obama.
Let's have how long do we have? How long do we have?
By the way, New York City won a dubious distinction today. I saw it when I was flying up here. New York, under Bill de Blasio, is now the dirtiest city in America.
Look, my wife lived in Chelsea. She was there. I mean, look, how can you deny what the good mayor did, Mayor Giuliani?
I was in the police department under him. It was a night and day.
Disastrous situation.
Yes.
A dangerous city. And with that no broken window policy, he turned it around. And it's as if we've forgotten. How can we forget?
Well, de Blasio,
jumping the turnstiles on the metro is where you begin.
The broken windows.
The culture begins.
Broken windows policing. Right. They're undoing it. And it's really sad for guys like me that worked under David Dinkins, and we saw, I say this, I told you this offline, we saw a change in 2 weeks. Not 2 months, not 2 years.
Can I just pull up to
Please.
50,000 feet? Interesting you say that. The parallel to our military. I was in the White House. It was the second month of the administration. We had a group of future Green Berets come into the building. I was asked to brief them. A Tier 1 operator on detail briefed them as well. After his briefing, I didn't know him, but he recognized me. He came up to me and he said, I need to tell you, Dr. Gorka, you have no idea how the morale of our troops has skyrocketed. Yep. Why? Because we have leadership that we understand has our back.
That's right.
Whether it's a commissioner, whether it's a mayor, or whether it's a commander-in-chief, it matters, John.
It does matter. It does matter. It matters more than anyone knows. I had people in federal agencies tell me that. I just hope we continue on until 2024.
Oh, look.
I really do.
I'll tell you one thing.
And beyond.
Working for the president, he's never going to give up. I was asked about impeachment on the stage today. I said, Democrats, bring it, because you have no idea. You have no idea who you're dealing with. I mean, he's just going to run around you on Twitter. He will make you a laughing stock, and the American people will laugh at you.
Oh, they enjoy it.
They enjoy it. We're going to have 7 more years of President Trump and 8 years after that of President Pence.
Last question. How long do you think Mueller's investigation goes?
I've spoken to the president since I left the White House. He has demonstrated to me an incredibly hands-off approach. He tweets about stuff, but he does not get involved in law enforcement, which is great. My desire is that the whole thing collapses by itself, right?
Me too.
He should not interfere. They should say, this is all we've got, and it's got nothing to do with Russia, and it's some wire fraud with the Ukraine 10 years ago by a guy
Let it collapse under it. Let the taxpayers complain now and say, why are we wasting money on this nonsense?
How many millions have we spent? Thousands
They won't tell us.
And thousands of man hours. You know it, right? You know it. And this indictment, I read it. Everybody should read it.
Yeah, I read it as well.
Read it. It's a joke.
It's ridiculous.
There's one, what was it, Pennsylvania, where the Russians spent, was it $30 or $80?
Yeah, they spent 40. I said it on my show the other day. They spent $46,000. Trump and Clinton campaign spent $81 million. The Russians were whispering into a hurricane and a tornado colliding.
And
it was ridiculous.
Clinton spent $12 million on one dodgy dossier.
Yeah, and by the way, the Trump rally in Florida, in South Florida, saw 15,000 people. The Russian rally saw 15.
Yeah.
As always, Seb, an absolute pleasure. Dr. Sebastian Gorka, our newest rebel.
All right, great to be on the team.
For all of your CPAC 2018 coverage, stay tuned to The Rebel, and don't forget to subscribe to our premium service at www.therebel.media rebel.com/shows and go to your app store. Check out the Rebel app.